Hey everyone, it's White Cross, and you have joined me for the Basics of Bullion series, Volume 2, Introduction to Gold Purity. If you are new to the channel, thank you for being here. I hope you will consider subscribing to the channel so you can see notifications about new videos as they are being released. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you again for spending some time with me. It means a lot, and I'm really glad that I'm putting out the information that you think is worthwhile watching. So the Basics of Bullion series is an entry-level beginner's guide to gold. And this installment, number 2, will be an introduction to gold purity. I like to begin all of my videos with a disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to give you financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. And I also try to begin each of my videos with a concept, and today's concept is simply going to be the term bullion. This is a word that's thrown around a little bit sometimes by people who are familiar with it without stopping to think about it. But if you are new to the idea of buying gold, and honestly, that's what this video series is all about. This is really kind of a slow introduction to physical gold for those of you out there who have never bought it before, are thinking about it and just don't know where to start. Bullion simply means high purity gold, in this case, high purity gold in either coin or bar form. So it's a good idea to think about bullion and how it relates to the idea of gold purity, because by definition, bullion literally means high purity gold. Some of you old timers who have been at this for a while may think that this information is a little bit rudimentary, and I hate to ask people to skip watching a video. In my personal belief, I believe that getting a fresh perspective, even on things that you are familiar with and comfortable with, is not a bad idea. And if you can glean one idea or a piece of information from watching these videos, I think it's probably worthwhile. Just keep in mind that this is a really slow, progressive introduction to physical gold for people who aren't that familiar with it. The last video that we did was an introduction to the physical and the human characteristics of gold, entitled Why is Gold Gold? Why do we think of it as being something with inherent value? And we'll touch a little bit on those concepts as we go deeper into this video on gold purity. Just kind of keep in mind that it's all supposed to go kind of together, hand in hand. And if you're watching this video series from the start, it'll start to kind of make sense for you. At least that's my hope. So purity. What is gold purity? It is simply the percentage of gold by volume. And we talked in the last video that gold is an element, which just simply means that it can't be broken down any further. Gold is gold in its purest form. Pure gold is pure gold. And if you're new to the concept of precious metals, you might be asking, well, why would we have something less than pure gold? And there are really two major reasons, and we're going to talk about both of those and how they kind of blend together into them. And then we'll also talk about the concept of carat gold versus purity. If you're new to the idea of gold, you've heard the word carat, that's K-A-R-A-T, thrown around a lot also. And we'll get into kind of a deeper discussion of what that means, and I'll give you some examples all throughout this video. So why does gold come in different purities? If gold is gold, why would you want it less than pure gold? And there's really two reasons. The first one is gold as a metal is quite soft. And we talked about that a little bit in the last video. Its malleability, the fact that it can bend without breaking. But when we talk about gold being soft, there's a little bit of misinformation out there, and people might have the wrong concept of how soft gold is. It's soft in a mechanical point of view, but when it comes down to it, it's not really that soft in a human perspective. If you've ever seen cartoons or movies about the West, when somebody picks up a gold coin and bites it to see if it's really a gold coin, that would shatter your teeth. That's not the way gold really works in the real world. It's still a pretty dense, pretty heavy, and pretty hard metal. But that malleability that we talked about means that items that are made of pure gold with really fine details wears off somewhat quickly. So you wouldn't want, for example, a gold ring with gold prongs that hold the gemstone like a diamond ring. You wouldn't want those prongs made out of pure gold, because pure gold is soft enough that if you just bumped into something over the course of the day, just wearing a ring like that on your finger, you might conceivably bend those prongs to the point where you would lose the gemstone, and nobody wants that. So gold is hard, but it's a little bit softer than some metals. So it's not ideal for things like fine detail or fine gripping in its purest sense. And that is most true when it comes to things like gold coins. Coins are some of the hardest working machines that human beings have ever invented. And if you think about it, just regular pocket change over the course of weeks and months gets beat up, banged around in a pocket, in a purse, in a coin purse, in change jars, or in the till of a shop. And that's true of gold also. Remember, gold for thousands of years has been spent, has been exchanged in commerce, much the same way that pocket change is still spent today. And if you were making a gold coin out of pure gold, those coins getting beat up, banged around, would lose some of their fine detail, and in fact would probably lose a little bit of their surface metal. And there's actually people that would cheat the system. That was called sweating coins, banging them together and kind of collecting the gold dust that resulted in it. People have been doing that for as long as there have been coins. So by mixing a small amount of other metal into pure gold, and remember that's called an alloy. Whenever you're mixing metals together, it's called an alloy. Gold has throughout history been mixed in an alloy, most often consisting of pure gold with a small amount of copper. Copper also an element. And copper, while it is also somewhat soft, it's much harder than gold, and the combination of those two elements in an alloy proves to be very strong, at least in terms of gold. So by introducing a small amount of copper into the molten gold when you are forming whatever it is that you're forming, you reduce the purity of gold, but you also increase its strength and its durability. So it's something that has been done for a long period of time. Sometimes other elements are used, or other metals are used as well in an alloy. Silver is a common one as well. So by mixing small amounts of copper and or silver in with gold, you increase the durability. And I've got some examples here. This is a large gold coin. This is called a Krugerrand. This is kind of an iconic gold coin. These are made in South Africa. And these were made starting in the 1960s, and they're still made to this day. And these gold coins are made of not pure gold, but of 22 karat gold. And we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about carat and how it refers to purity. 22 karat gold. So these coins are 91.6% pure gold with 8.5%, 8.3% copper added to it. And it gives the gold a little bit of that almost coppery look. Some people don't like that. I personally think it's very cool. I like having Krugerrands and I like what they represent. Some other examples, and kind of where the South African government got its idea for alloying their gold coins, are these gold coins here. These are called sovereigns, and this is the English standard gold coin that was England's standard gold coin for about 200 years. It's about the size of a United States nickel, and you can see on the back, the reverse, that's a picture of St. George slaying a dragon. St. George is riding on a horse, and it's very finely detailed. And because England had colonies all over the world, and these coins were used in commerce on a daily transaction basis for hundreds of years, England recognized that they needed to have integrity for their gold coins. By mixing a very small amount of copper, again, about 8.3% copper by volume, they were able to increase the strength of their coins that were used in daily commerce, and that fine detail that was really important to the integrity of the gold. And the integrity just means people willing to accept it, people willing to believe that it was a good gold, that it wasn't a counterfeit, that it was something that had value. That integrity relied in part on the design withholding or holding up to being battered and abused all around the world. These were shipped to all the English colonies, from South Africa to Australia to India. And in fact, there were actually mints in some of those countries that were making these pieces for the English government. So by mixing a small amount of copper, and in very few instances a little bit of silver also mixed into sovereigns, they were able to preserve the integrity of their gold. These are examples of American gold eagles. These are quarter eagles, and we'll talk about weights and measures in the next video in this series, but this is 1/4 of a gold eagle. And this is also 22 karat gold. This is 91.6% pure gold. But in the case of modern American bullion coins, we actually mix in a small amount of silver as well. And it just kind of gives it that beautiful honey blonde look. Those are 22 karat gold coins, 91.6. All three of these examples of gold that has been alloyed with a small amount of copper that brings down its purity just a little bit, but it increases that integrity. So that's kind of the first reason why you would have gold that is not 100% pure. The second reason kind of goes hand in hand with that. I talked about the integrity of some of these coins, and it is important to understand that some of these coins were used for 30, 40, 50 years each, and eventually they might be melted down. But in the case of the Krugerrand, now being made for 40 or 50 years, in the case of the sovereigns being made for almost 200 years, it got to be a tradition. So that 91.6% purity gold, and South Africa used the same 91.6%, sometimes called crown gold, because it had been decided by the King of England at the time that that was going to be the purity that they used. They have been making Krugerrands for many decades. They made the sovereigns, and they still make the sovereigns to this day of that same 91.6% pure gold. It became a tradition. It was something that was expected. Again, it kind of lends itself to that, the idea of the integrity of the gold. If your great-great-great-great-grandfather was English or from one of the English colonies at that period of time in the middle of the 1800s, he saw these sovereigns being made in that same 91.6% pure gold ratio, and that was what your great-great-grandfather saw and expected, what your great-grandmother saw and expected, what your grandfather saw and expected, your father, and down to you. It's been done for so long that is kind of the expectation. So durability was one of the factors, and then it just kind of became an expectation, and that was what was expected from people who were using these on a daily basis. It kind of became the tradition and what they were used to. So sovereigns continue to be made to this day of that same ratio of gold with a little bit of copper added. Interesting to note, the South African Krugerrand, even though it came about kind of after gold had left most of the major currencies in the world, it was no longer being used as a currency. Originally, it was designed to be spent. So believe it or not, when South Africa decided to start making the Krugerrand, they had intended it to be a circulating gold coin. And that's one of the reasons why they decided to adopt the English standard of 91.6% purity and added a little bit of copper, because it was their expectation that the Krugerrand would be spent. How much was it going to be valued for? Well, the rand is the South African currency, like our dollar is our currency. And this is called a Krugerrand because it was named after this gentleman Kruger on the front, kind of one of the ancestors, the founding fathers of the South African regime. So this was designed to be spent and was designed to be valued at 1 ounce of pure gold. Now, they didn't really get spent, at least not that often. It wasn't something that was actually used in commerce, despite the fact that that was their intention. But again, expectations and tradition dictate that that's what they were made from in the originally, and so that's what they continue to be made from to this day. So some examples of why gold would have been a little bit less than pure gold for these two reasons. It was a strength issue, and it also just kind of became a tradition after a while. Interesting concepts of purity. One thing that I wanted to touch on before we get into the idea of carat gold versus percentage purity is the idea that some newbies or people that are new to buying and selling gold might have difficulty understanding that modern gold bullion coins, and I'm talking about things like the American Gold Eagle, the American Buffalo, the Canadian Maple Leaf, the Austrian Philharmonic, the South African Krugerrand, all of these modern gold coins contain 1 troy ounce of pure gold. And again, we'll talk about weights and measures in the next video, but it's important to understand that even though the South African Krugerrand and the American Gold Eagle are 22 karat gold rather than pure gold, they too contain exactly 1 troy ounce of pure gold. How is that possible? Well, they weigh just a little bit more than a troy ounce to account for the copper or the copper and silver in the case of the American Gold Eagle that has been added to the gold in order to make it 22 karat gold. So even though they are slightly less pure, they weigh a little bit more to account for the alloy. So it doesn't matter what 1 ounce gold coin you're talking about around the world. All modern bullion gold coins contain 1 troy ounce of pure gold. And that's something that I'm going to hit on several times during this series because I see so many questions about it online, and it seems a little bit difficult for people to wrap their heads around. But think of it in terms of maybe a gas tank. If you're looking at a compact car versus a huge 4x4 pickup truck, they are able to hold vastly different amounts of gas. But if you put 10 gallons of gas in each of them contains 10 gallons of gas. It doesn't matter how big the tank is. The same holds true for these gold coins. 24 karat gold coins, pure gold coins, weigh 1 troy ounce. The ones that are 22 karat gold, or 91.6% pure, weigh a little bit more than 1 troy ounce to account for that extra metal that's added in. And that's really all there is to it. So, carat purity. Carat is an old school style of expressing gold's purity, and it began in the 13 or 1400s. It's a little bit difficult to decide when exactly people started using carat, but it came about because precious metals and gemstones were weighed in carob seeds. A carob is a plant, a medicinal plant, sometimes a replacement for chocolate, whose seeds were thought to be universal in weight. So it didn't matter where you were growing the carob plant, everybody thought those seeds weighed almost exactly the same amount. So it became a pretty logical way of measuring precious things. And in the case of gold, it became kind of apparent for a German coin, at least that's what scholars think, in the 13 or 1400s. There was a German gold coin that weighed 24 carob seeds, and the word carob eventually became changed to carat over time, especially for the expression of purity of gold. These German gold coins had 24 carat seeds worth of gold in them. And as we talked about before, sometimes pure gold is deemed to be a little bit too soft for use in something that is used in commerce. So they alloyed that gold by replacing 1 or 2 or 3 seeds worth of gold with another metal. So what started out as a weight, weighing 24 seeds, it now became a ratio. How much of the 24th has been replaced by copper or some other metal. So it started off as a weight, and in fact it is still used as a weight, although it's been much more standardized than just using a carob seed. It's still used as a weight in expression of gemstones, like you hear diamonds that weigh 1 carat or 5 carat. It's that expression of weight. In terms of gold, And in America, at least, it's spelled with a K, K-A-R-A-T. It is expression of a ratio. How much 24ths is pure gold? And pure gold is 24 of 24. It's that fraction. So 24 karat gold is pure gold. So it gets to be a little bit confusing because in America we use K carat for gold and C carat for gemstones. In some parts of the world they still use C carat for gold purity as well. But since most of my viewers are watching and I'm based in the United States of America, we're going to go with that American standard of K, meaning gold purity. So it's a purity of gold and it's expressed in a fraction of 24ths. It's a little bit archaic, it's a little bit difficult to understand, and that's why sometimes gold is expressed in percentages also, or milesial fineness. You'll see gold expressed as 0.999 pure means the exact same thing as 24 karat. So it's two expressions that express the same idea. If you've ever measured board feet before, you're building a cabinet and you have the option to get a piece of wood, are you going to cut that board in inches or are you going to cut that board in feet? It's the same board. The dimensions are going to be the exact same when you're done with it. But if you use inches or if you use feet, it's kind of the same idea of expressing gold purity in carat or percentage. Same gold, it's just different ways of expressing its purity. So, we talked about the origins of where the word carat comes from and how it's a little bit archaic. It's still used in some instances, but it seems to be kind of primarily moving into jewelry. Carat gold is often talked about in terms of jewelry. We don't really think about carat gold too much when it comes to bullion, but you can use carat if you want to. These bars, example, and it's no surprise to people who've watched some of the earlier videos that I have some nice Inglehard pieces. This is a 1/4 troy ounce 99 pure bar, and you could call this 24 karat if you wanted to. These coins, because they contain 2/24ths worth of copper, you've reduced the purity to 22/24ths or 22 karat gold. These are all examples of 22 karat gold. Now, carat doesn't match up all the time, and that's why I think it's probably more beneficial to use that percentage gauge rather than carat. And here's an example. This is an American $10 gold eagle. So these were actually circulated in the United States of America. This one dates from the late 1880s. And this was kind of our big circulating gold coin. It was called an eagle. We also made a double eagle, a $20 gold piece. This is a $10 gold piece. And a half eagle, obviously a $5 gold piece. We even had quarter eagles. But the American standard for the better part of 150 years or so was 90%. So we used a 90% pure gold, and I believe most of these were alloyed with copper as well. That doesn't really translate to a carat very easily. When we think of expressions in carat, we think of that as an even number, and 90% wouldn't work out to an even number, so I think it's beneficial to call it by its percentage purity, and in fact, I would usually call most of these by their percentage purity as well. This is an example of a French 20 franc piece. This was made from the turn of the 19th century up until the late 1920s. This is also from a group of coins called LMU, that stands for Latin Monetary Union, and we will definitely talk about those coins in some of the I believe it's the fourth video in the series when we talk about some of the ideas that beginning gold buyers might want to consider. I think these are wonderful examples and a great piece. It too, 90% pure gold. So it doesn't really have a corresponding even number carat. I just call it 90% pure. Once you get more familiar with these pieces, it's pretty easy to remember which ones are pure gold and which ones are 22 karat or 90% pure. I mentioned briefly that every major bullion gold coin in the world right now contains 1 troy ounce, regardless of whether or not it was pure gold. Remember, that's 999 pure or 24 karat. versus 22 karat gold, which is 91.6% pure. There is it doesn't matter which coin you're talking about, and it's understood within the bullion community. Everybody who's buying, everybody who's selling, if they know what they're talking about, will automatically recognize that each of these coins contains 1 troy ounce of pure gold. One exception, and that one exception is the Chinese panda. From the time that it was first introduced in 1982 all the way up until 2016, the Chinese panda also contained 1 troy ounce of pure gold. In 2016, the Chinese government reduced the weight of the gold coin, so now it weighs 30 grams. Again, we'll talk about weights and measures in the next video, but that is about 1.5 grams smaller than every other gold coin that's been modern, that is modern produced in the world. The Chinese panda, the one exception. One of many reasons why I don't suggest pandas to anybody who is not an advanced stacker. So, some other examples of carat gold. When we think about it, remember, it's a ratio, parts per 24. It seems a little bit archaic, and it's just something that's been done for tradition, kind of the same way that these coins continue to be made in 22 karat gold themselves. 24 karat gold, 99.9% pure. Examples would be like the Canadian maple or the Austrian Philharmonic or the new English Britannia. Also the American gold buffalo coin, 99.9% pure. In some instances, like the Canadian maple, it may even be 4 nines pure or even 5 nines pure, 99.9999 pure. 24 karat. We don't worry about that little tiny fraction at the end of the percentage. It's understood, again, that 24 karat equals pure gold equals 99.9% pure. And we've talked about some examples of 22 karat gold. 91.6% pure examples would be the Krugerrand, the American Eagle, or the British Sovereign. And it's interesting to note that even though the market seems to still want some of these classic coins made in 22 karat gold, like the Sovereign, like the American Eagle, and like the South African Krugerrand, those countries also now make 99.9% pure products. So there's a little bit of that tradition, and there's a little bit of modern supply and demand. What does the market seem to want right now? The market seems to want a little bit of both. So the American Eagle, also complemented by the gold buffalo, 99.9% pure. The Sovereign, 22 karat, also complemented by the brand new Britannia gold coins. Those are 99.9% pure. And I believe the South African has started releasing a coin they call the Elephant, which I believe is 99.9% pure. So even though these countries continue to release these 22 karat gold coins, they are also releasing 24 karat gold coins. And you see how I use those terms interchangeably. They mean the same thing. It's just one expressed in terms of carat, one expressed in terms of percentage purity. This ring has played a pretty big role in most of my videos if you've seen them from the beginning, and this ring is 18 karat gold. When I got married about 25 years ago, this was the highest carat purity gold that I could find, and I searched far and wide to try to find that at the time because I've been a gold stacker for that long and even much longer than that. So it was important to me to have the highest purity gold that I could have. Unfortunately, in America, that was really difficult to find. So this ring, 18 karat gold, that is 75% pure, or to look at it in reduced fractions, 3/4 purity. So in carat, 18 karat, in percentage purity, 75% pure. The American jewelry market has been told, consumer has been told for 100 years now, that gold is too soft to make jewelry with. And I will have a video on gold jewelry and how it should be used and how it shouldn't be used in your precious metals holdings. But I think it's important to understand that Americans have been told for a long time that gold is too soft to be used in jewelry. Now, I gave the example of those prongs on a ring that holds a gemstone. You probably wouldn't want that in 24 or even 22 karat gold. But when you start talking about alloys like 18 karat, that would probably be sufficient to hold most gemstones. But I have heard from so many different jewelers over the years that 22 karat gold, 24 karat gold is way too soft for jewelry. And this is my daily wear necklace. This is about 155 grams, and it is 24 karat gold. This is 99.999 pure gold. And I know that because I had it made it custom made for me, but I've also had it checked out at our local university's metallic engineering division. And they did an all-day spectrum analysis on it to prove that it is in fact a 99.9% pure 24 karat gold. I bought this necklace about 6 years ago, a little bit less than 6 years ago, and I wear it literally every day. It's not too soft. Again, things with really fine details on coins where you need that detail to look nice and crisp and sharp for integrity purposes. Or jewelry where you've got a really fine detailed engraving or holding a precious gemstone. You might want to alloy gold a little bit to give it a little bit more strength, a little bit more integrity. But in my personal opinion, when it comes to things like necklaces that aren't beat up the same way that maybe a ring on your finger would be, or even if it's just a simple band like this one, higher karat gold is perfectly fine. In my opinion, higher karat gold is perfectly fine, and I think the American consumer is just starting to realize that. Interesting to note that the rest of the world would have no idea what 14 karat gold was. We talked about 18 karat gold. 14 karat is 7/12 pure, or 58.3% pure. And as an American consumer, if you are an American consumer, you probably recognize 14 karat is kind of our standard for jewelry. But most places in the world would never want gold that was only 58.3% pure. They want gold that's 90% pure or even 99% pure. That's their expectation. And again, I think that market is starting to shift in the United States. And the last percentage that we'll talk about, the last carat that we'll talk about, is 10 karat. Now, this was popular for a long time, and when you're talking about alloys that are a large amount of other metal being mixed in with the gold, the one benefit they have is that you increase the volume of the amount of metal that you're working with. 10 karat gold for a long time in the United States has been reserved for things like class rings, which tend to be quite large, and they also have some pretty fine detail on them, and they are on your hands. Working class people bang their rings around all day long, so that alloy would make it a little bit stronger. But it is so little gold at the point that it's 10 karat, it's 41.7% pure. It is much more something else than gold at that point. So these are some of the reasons why I don't believe that lower karat gold should ever really play a part in physical precious metals holding. I'm not saying don't own it. I'm not saying don't wear it. But at a point where it is 50%, give or take, pure gold, it doesn't really make sense to me that it would be included in part of your precious metals, your physical precious metals holdings. So there's the introduction to gold purity, basics of bullion volume 2. We talked about why gold might be alloyed over time. It was something to add a little bit of strength, but it also kind of became the expectation over time, those kind of two factors playing against each other. And then we talked about carat versus percentage purity. Remember, inches to feet, it doesn't really matter which one you're using. They represent the same things, just kind of an older style of representing that purity versus a little bit more precise percentage, and you can go to the hundredths or even thousandths of a percent to really talk about specifically how pure gold is. If you enjoyed this video, and I hope you did, I hope you will once again consider subscribing to the channel. If you have any comments about any of these items, leave a comment below and I'll be happy to try to address it when I can. If you have any suggestions about any other videos you'd like to see be made, especially in this introductory series, I want to hear from you new buyers who have any questions, and if there's anything else I can say that might help you on your journey, I'd love to hear from you, and you can leave those messages down below as well. The next video in this series will be weights and measures, and then the final video, at least I think at this point, will be suggestions, some ideas to give you that you might want to consider as you go forward now armed with a little bit more of this information, some ideas that you might consider for buying gold for the first time. And as always, I want to thank you for spending some time with me and allowing me to be part of your journey as you go deeper into the world of physical precious metals.